The grand ballroom of the Dragon Emperor's palace was awash in gold and silk, a kaleidoscope of noble figures and elaborate gowns, each one representing a kingdom, a people, a history. Champagne flutes clinked, and the murmur of voices blended with the soft melody of strings, creating an atmosphere both celebratory and fraught with tension. It was a night meant to honor a peace agreement, but for me, it felt like the beginning of an insidious war. I stood at the edge of the room, away from the dancing, my fingers tightening around the delicate stem of my glass. I was Princess Lorelei of Kelia, a kingdom torn apart by dragons. We had spent years at war with them, fighting against their raids, their demands for tribute, their insatiable hunger. But now, the Dragon Emperor, Cipher of House Ignis, was offering peace in exchange for a price I could hardly bear to consider: my hand in marriage. And though the Emperor promised an end to the sacrifices, an end to the destruction, I knew better. The peace was a trap, a dangerous illusion. Caspian, my brother, stood beside me, his eyes narrowed as he surveyed the room. His lips twitched with a sarcastic smile as he leaned closer, speaking in a low murmur only I could hear. "They don't even try to hide it, do they?" he said, his voice thick with disdain. "Not a single one of them is human. Look at them. Do you see it? The eyes that flicker with flame. The way they move. Dragon or human, there's no real difference anymore." I glanced around, noting the subtle shifts in the crowd, the subtle flare of golden eyes, the way some of the figures seemed to glide, not walk. Cipher's dragons had learned to blend in with us, to adopt our forms and speak our language. And why not? After all, the world had been theirs long before ours. "But this marriage," I muttered, lifting my glass to my lips, "it's not about peace. It's about control. He wants a human bride. To prove to the world that dragons are civilized. To show that they can play our game, wear our crowns." Caspian snorted, not looking at me. "What good will it do him to marry a woman who can't bear him a child?" His voice turned bitter. "A woman who is infertile, thanks to one of his kind." I felt the familiar sting of the truth. The dragon's poison had done its work on me, stripping away any hope I had of ever being a mother. The one thing that a dragon emperor desired above all else, an heir, was beyond my reach. But that didn't stop my father from agreeing to this arrangement, or from pushing me into the heart of it. A marriage to the dragon emperor was peace, after all. And peace was all that mattered. I could barely stomach the thought. My father had made the decision without consulting me, agreeing to everything before I had a chance to protest. And now, here I was, standing in the dragon's palace, preparing to play the role of the willing bride. All while my heart burned with the need for vengeance, the need to end this nightmare once and for all. But how? I didn't know yet. I didn't have the answers, but I had a plan. A secret weapon hidden around my neck, dragon poison. One drop, and the most powerful being in the world would fall dead at my feet. One drop, and the dragons would lose their emperor. The only thing left to figure out was how to get close enough to deliver it. "How long do you think it will take him to realize who I really am?" I asked Caspian, my voice tight. He looked at me, his expression dark. "As long as it takes for him to realize that you aren't the perfect princess he thought he was marrying. His little peace offering. The one who'll bear him an heir. But that's not who you are, is it?" "No," I whispered, my fingers tightening around the glass. "I'm not. Welcome to Floxy's Shifter Romance Tales, where fate bites deep, love burns wild, and powerful beings fall for the one they were never meant to touch." Before we begin, take a second to support the channel. Tap the like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Now get comfortable, put on your headphones, and let's begin. I had spent my life fighting dragons. My people had suffered for far too long. My kingdom had burned, my friends and family taken as sacrifices, and I'd been powerless to stop it. Until now. Now I had a chance. I could end it all with one drop of poison. But then Cipher entered the room. It was impossible not to notice him. The atmosphere shifted the moment he appeared, his presence overwhelming, even in a room full of the most powerful rulers of the 5 kingdoms. He moved through the crowd like a shadow, tall, dark, and imposing, his eyes glowing with an intensity that seemed to burn through me from across the room. I hadn't expected to feel this way. Not when I was supposed to be pretending. But when his gaze landed on me, something inside me twisted. A mix of fear and something else. Something I couldn't quite explain. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, nothing else existed. The noise, the people, the palace, all of it faded into nothing. And then, like a predator sensing its prey, Cypher smiled. A dangerous, knowing smile. I didn't move. I couldn't. His gaze held me in place, like invisible chains wrapping around my body, pulling me toward him, toward the thing I hated most, the creature who had destroyed my kingdom. He took a step toward me, and the world tilted on its axis. Every instinct I had screamed to run. But I didn't. He stopped just in front of me, his eyes never leaving mine, as if he was waiting for me to speak. "Princess Lorelei of Kellier," he said, his voice deep and rich, as if each word had been carefully chosen just for me. His smile deepened. "I am honored to finally meet you." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My pulse raced in my throat, my body frozen in place. I could feel his heat radiating from him, a quiet force that threatened to overwhelm me. His presence was like a storm, and I, foolishly, had walked into its eye. "I'm sure you must be wondering," Cypher continued, his smile never faltering, "what brought me to this point? To offer peace." He paused, his gaze flicking briefly to the guests around us, before returning to me. "But peace is not what I'm after. It's not what I've ever wanted." I swallowed, the weight of his words pressing down on me. "What do you want, then?" I asked, my voice coming out far too weak for my liking. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing my ear as he whispered, "I want you." For a split second, I thought I might faint. His voice, his proximity, it all felt like an enchantment, a trap I couldn't escape. "I'm here to take you as my bride, Lorelei," he murmured. "But not as you think. No, I'm not interested in a political union. I want a mate, a woman capable of bearing me an heir. And that, princess, is where you come in." My breath caught. My world shattered. The Dragon Emperor, Cypher, didn't want me as his bride for the peace of kingdoms. He wanted me to bear his child, to secure his legacy. And I had a secret that would ruin him. The ballroom had quieted, but the weight of the Emperor's presence pressed down on me, suffocating. His eyes were still on me, though his focus had shifted to the other princesses who stood to my left and right. His gaze lingered on them with the same cold calculation he had given me. And then, just as I had feared, he turned his back to us and began to make his way through the crowd, his entourage trailing behind him like loyal wolves. I couldn't breathe. For the briefest of moments, I thought I had imagined the intensity of his stare. But no, there was something there, something far deeper than a mere emperor's gaze. It was as if he knew me in a way I couldn't explain, like he saw beyond the facade I had spent years perfecting. I glanced at Darius, who stood stoically beside me, his expression unreadable. His eyes were focused on Cypher as well, but there was a quiet tension to his posture that I could feel radiating between us. It was the same unease I had felt since the moment my father had agreed to the contract. The moment I knew I was walking into a trap. "You're not just marrying him, are you?" Darius said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper as he leaned toward me. "You know this isn't just politics. It's a game, Violetta. One you won't be able to win." I swallowed hard, unsure of how to answer him. His words rang in my ears, but I couldn't let them break my focus. The moment I allowed myself to feel doubt, I would be lost. "I'm playing my own game, Darius," I said, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. "I'll have my revenge on the dragons one way or another." He looked at me for a long moment, his sharp blue eyes assessing me. "Just remember, he's not like the others. He's dangerous." Before I could respond, the music shifted again, and the Emperor stopped at the center of the room, his commanding presence pulling the attention of everyone in the ballroom. He raised his hand, and the music ceased. A heavy silence fell over the crowd, thick with anticipation. Ladies, Cypher's voice was low and rich, but it carried through the space effortlessly. I welcome you to my palace. You have been invited here not just as guests, but as contestants in a most peculiar game. I require a mate, one who can bear me an heir. A human heir, no less. I stiffened, unable to stop my heart from racing. His words felt like a cold slap across my face, but I refused to let it show. I stood tall, my chin lifting in defiance. There was no way I would let him see the fear his proclamation had stirred in me. Not here. Not now. Do you all understand the stakes? He continued, his gaze sweeping over the women in front of him. I will not be choosing a bride tonight. Instead, I will choose one of you to court. If, in time, you can form a true mate bond with me, you will be the one to give me the heir I need. And you will become my empress. His eyes met mine once more, and for a brief second, I could feel that strange, undeniable pull that had been growing since I first saw him. My pulse quickened, and a shiver ran down my spine. I forced myself to look away. I couldn't allow myself to be distracted by this man, this dragon. He was not my salvation. He was my enemy. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Cypher held up a hand, and immediately, the room fell silent again. You, he said, his voice soft but commanding, will all have a chance. A chance to prove you are worthy of my attention. To see who can offer me what I need. The rest of you will be dismissed. I didn't even know what that meant. A part of me feared that it meant something more sinister, but I couldn't let myself think that way. Not now. I had to focus. Focus on the mission. Cypher turned to leave the ballroom, his entourage following him out, but before he did, he glanced back at me, his gaze lingering for a fraction of a second too long. It sent a chill through me, a feeling that had nothing to do with the cold that was settling in my bones from being in the presence of so many dragons. Princess Violetta, he said, his voice low and almost teasing. I look forward to our time together. The words hung in the air long after he had left. The other women remained frozen, their expressions a mix of confusion, fear, and calculated determination. I knew what they were thinking. They were all wondering who would be chosen next. But not me. I wasn't going to wait. I wasn't going to let them think they had the advantage. I had a plan. The following days were a blur of sumptuous meals, lavish gowns, and endless meetings with attendants who explained the rules of the palace. It was a strange, unsettling world I had been thrust into. A world that revolved around power, dragons, and the twisted game that Cypher played with the princesses of the human kingdoms. I was surrounded by competitors, and yet I couldn't bring myself to look at any of them as threats. They were just distractions. The only one I needed to focus on was him. And so I did. For the first time in days, I stood before the mirror in my chambers, studying my reflection. I had grown accustomed to the mask of composure I wore every day. But tonight, I would allow myself to think about it. The bond, the pull I felt toward him. He had done something to me, something I couldn't explain. It wasn't magic, I told myself. It wasn't some curse or spell. No, this was something far more dangerous. It was desire. And that was a weakness. A dangerous, fragile weakness that I could not afford. I turned away from the mirror and walked out of my room, my mind racing. Tonight was the night I would take action. I had no intention of becoming just another princess vying for his attention. No, I would make him choose me. I would make him think I was a true option. If he wanted an heir, I would give him one. Just not in the way he expected. I found Cypher in the gardens later that evening. He was standing near a fountain, his back to me, staring out into the night. The cool breeze rustled through the trees, and the faint smell of jasmine filled the air. I had never seen the palace at night before. The shadows seemed to play tricks on the eye, and the moonlight cast everything in a pale, eerie glow. "You're here," Cypher said, his voice surprisingly soft. He turned slowly to face me, his eyes narrowing as he took in my appearance. I had chosen a dress that would draw attention without seeming too eager. The deep red fabric clung to my form, the delicate lacework at the edges only accentuating my curves. "You didn't think I would come?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I never know what to expect from you," He replied with a smirk that sent a shiver down my spine. You're not like the others. Not even close. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. I don't intend to be, but if you want an heir, I can give you one. Cypher's eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something deeper than the cold, calculating ruler he projected. Was it hope? You think you can just give me an heir? He asked, stepping closer. I didn't flinch. I can. But you need to choose me, Cypher, not them. He stopped in front of me, his chest rising and falling with each breath. And why would I choose you? Because you don't want a princess. You want power. And I can give you that. He reached out, his fingers grazing the edge of my sleeve. His touch sent sparks of heat racing through my veins. Is that all you think I want? I held my breath as his hand moved to the side of my face, his thumb brushing against my jawline. I looked up into his eyes, my pulse quickening. This wasn't part of the plan. I had come here to manipulate him, to make him believe I was the only choice, but now I wasn't so sure. Cypher's voice was low, almost a growl. You may have come here with a plan, princess, but I've been playing this game much longer than you. Continuing with Chapter 3, we'll delve deeper into the complicated dynamics between Princess Violetta and Emperor Cypher as their relationship intensifies, full of twists, emotional tension, and intrigue. The days blurred into each other as I continued my charade. The palace was enormous, sprawling, filled with dragons of all shapes and sizes, and it was clear to me now that this place was not just a kingdom, it was a labyrinth. Every corner held a secret, every hallway whispered tales of power and ancient magic, and I was supposed to navigate this treacherous land, all the while pretending I wasn't playing the most dangerous game of my life. Cypher was everything I had expected, and nothing at all like I had imagined. His cold, calculating exterior was a mask, yes, but it was more than that. It was a barrier, one that he had erected over centuries to protect himself from the very thing I feared, the vulnerability of being loved and loving in return. I couldn't stop thinking about that night in the garden. The way his hand had lingered on my skin, the heat of his touch searing through the fabric of my dress, through the very core of my being. For a fleeting moment, I had wondered if he saw me, truly saw me, or if I was just another prize to be won, another woman vying for his attention, all of us simply pieces in a game that none of us could control. He had kissed me, but it hadn't been the kiss of a man desperate for a queen. It had been the kiss of someone who knew exactly what they wanted, and who was determined to have it. I hadn't been prepared for that. But what frightened me more than the intensity of his touch was how easily I had melted under his gaze, how quickly I had allowed myself to be drawn into his orbit. I had come here to destroy him, to use his own desire against him, and finish what my people had started. But somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. The lines had blurred, and now I wasn't sure if I was still playing the game, or if I had become a player in his. It was late when I finally returned to my chambers, my body still humming from the brief encounter in the garden. My breath was uneven, my pulse still quick from the memory of his touch, and as I entered the room, I slammed the door behind me with a force that startled me. I needed to regain control. I needed to remind myself why I was here. I was not here for him. I was not here to succumb to this magnetic pull, this dangerous chemistry that seemed to envelop every interaction with Cypher. I had a mission, and I had to stay focused, but my thoughts were clouded. My heart was a battlefield, torn between the mission I had sworn to complete and the growing temptation that simmered between us. Violetta, I muttered to myself, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman who stood there was a stranger to me now. She had once been certain of everything, of her duty, of her purpose, of her place in the world. But now she was unsure. She didn't know if she wanted to be with him, to truly embrace the bond we shared, or if she wanted to kill him. The thought was jarring, but it was the truth. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. The weight of my emotions was too much to bear. I could feel the bond between us like a thread that was constantly pulling me closer to him, an invisible force I couldn't escape. But it wasn't just the bond, was it? It was the way he looked at me when no one else was watching, the way his presence seemed to fill the entire room when he walked into it. I couldn't deny it. I was drawn to him, and it made me sick. The next day, I was summoned to the royal chambers again. This time, there was no subtlety, no veil of civility. Cypher wanted me. Not for politics, not for power, but for something else entirely. He had summoned me, and I knew that there was no escaping this meeting. I found him standing by the window, looking out over the vast expanse of the Dragon Kingdom. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light over his dark features, and I had to stop myself from staring. The light seemed to create a halo around him, accentuating his beauty in a way that was almost cruel. "Princess Violetta," his voice came softly, but it was tinged with an edge I couldn't ignore. "Come here." I stepped forward, but I refused to let him see the effect his presence was having on me. I stood tall, despite the growing sense of vulnerability creeping up my spine. "What is it this time, Emperor?" I asked, my voice colder than I had intended. Cypher turned slowly, his piercing eyes locking onto mine. There was a storm behind them, a dangerous intensity that made my heart race. "You've been avoiding me." I crossed my arms over my chest, refusing to give him any satisfaction. "Avoiding you? I don't see how it's any of your concern." His lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "It is my concern. You are here because I've chosen you. You, above all the others. You are the one I want." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening in response. "Is that supposed to mean something to me?" His eyes darkened. "Yes, it should. I didn't bring you here for your beauty or your political alliances. I brought you here because you have something the others don't. You're stronger. You're more than just a pawn in my game, Violetta. You're the one who will give me what I need." I could feel his gaze on me, searching, prodding, looking for something I wasn't ready to reveal. "Tell me, Violetta," he said, stepping closer. "How long do you plan to keep pretending? You can't resist me. You never could." I took a step back, my heart pounding. "You're delusional." "Am I?" He closed the distance between us, towering over me. "You feel it too. Don't lie to me. You can't pretend this attraction isn't real." I looked up at him, my breath hitching in my throat. "What do you want from me, Cypher?" He leaned in, his breath warm against my skin. "I want you to stop fighting this," he whispered. "I want you to admit what we both know, that you are mine." His words shattered me. I recoiled, but I didn't move away. My body was betraying me, my mind consumed by thoughts of what it would be like to give in. I was playing his game now, I realized, and I was losing. Later that evening, I found myself standing in front of his chambers once again. I had come here to kill him, to destroy the man who had caused so much pain, so much suffering. But now, as I stood before the door, I felt the pull of the bond stronger than ever. Was this what I had come here for? To destroy him, or to embrace him? I didn't know anymore. The door opened before I could knock. Cypher stood in front of me, as breathtaking as ever. His eyes held something I couldn't name, but it was dangerous. I knew it would destroy me. "You came," he said, his voice low, almost triumphant. "I came to end this," I replied, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure what I meant. He stepped aside, his eyes never leaving mine. "Then end it." I stepped into the room, my pulse racing, my body alive with something I couldn't name. The bond was more than just a connection, it was a force. And it was pulling me toward him, toward the man who had become both my enemy and my obsession. "I'm not afraid of you," I said, though my voice trembled. "You should be," Cypher replied, his voice a growl. "You should be afraid of what happens when you let go." I didn't have time to respond before his hands were on me, pulling me into the kiss I had been dreading. His lips were hungry, demanding, and as his mouth moved against mine, I felt everything I had been trying to resist crumble. I could feel the heat, the fire, the power that radiated from him. It was like nothing I had ever experienced. His body pressed against mine, his hands moving to places I never thought I would allow. But in that moment, I couldn't stop him. I didn't want to. Continuing Chapter 3, we'll dive deeper into the consequences of Violetta's growing internal conflict and her complex relationship with Cypher, while maintaining the intrigue and emotional tension. The kiss was a whirlwind, consuming every rational thought I had left. I had come to this palace with a singular mission: destroy the Emperor. I had to remember that. I had to stay focused. But as Cypher's lips pressed against mine with unrelenting intensity, my body betrayed my every thought. I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't fight the desire that surged through me like wildfire, every touch sparking a reaction I didn't understand. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, the heat of his skin radiating through the thin fabric of my gown. His touch sent electric shocks through my veins, igniting something deep within me. My breath caught as I tried to push him away, but he was too strong. His mouth was hungry, claiming mine with a ferocity that made my heart race. "Cypher," I whispered against his lips, breaking the kiss for a brief moment to catch my breath. "Don't say it," he murmured, his voice low and rough, almost as if he were afraid of what he might hear. His hands traced the curve of my back, pulling me closer still. "I know what you're thinking. I know what you came here for. But don't lie to me, Violetta. You feel this too." I couldn't speak, couldn't form the words. He was right, and it was maddening. The bond, the pull between us, it was undeniable. I had told myself over and over that it was just a tactic, a manipulation, but in this moment, with him so close, I could feel the truth of it. The truth that scared me more than anything. "You don't understand," I whispered, shaking my head. "I'm not here for you. I never wanted this." His hand slid to the back of my neck, holding me in place as he gazed into my eyes, his own glowing with an intensity one had never seen before. "I know what you came here to do," he said, his voice steady, yet thick with emotion. "But you need to stop lying to yourself, Violetta. You're not here to kill me. You're here because you can't resist me." The word struck me like a physical blow. I tried to pull away, to escape, but my legs felt weak, my body swaying from the magnetic force of his presence. "No," I gasped, my mind spinning. "Yes, you are," he interrupted, his lips brushing against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. "You're here because you can't walk away. No one else has ever made you feel like this, have they?" I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream, to push him away, to remind him of the poison I carried in my necklace, the plan that had once been so clear in my mind. But the truth was staring me in the face, and it terrified me. I was falling for him, and I couldn't stop it. "Don't pretend you don't want me," he said, his voice a low growl that made my pulse spike. "Don't pretend you're not just as trapped in this as I am." I felt the weight of his words, the truth behind them. I was trapped. And worse, I was beginning to want him. This man, this dragon who had destroyed my kingdom, who had slaughtered my people, who had taken everything from me, was the one I couldn't seem to resist. He had his claws in me, and I was afraid I would never be able to pull free. He kissed me again, and this time there was no resistance left in me. I melted into him, every kiss burning away the walls I had spent so long building. I could feel the desperation in his touch, the need, and it mirrored my own. His hands were everywhere, roaming over my skin with a possessiveness that left me breathless, but it wasn't just lust. There was something deeper behind it, something that made my heart ache in a way I couldn't explain. When we finally pulled apart, I was gasping for air, my body trembling from the intensity of the kiss. I wanted to push him away, to tell him that this wasn't real, that I wasn't some pawn to be played with, but the words wouldn't come. He was right. I was as tangled in this as he was. "Violetta," he whispered, his voice husky. "You think you can kill me? You think you can walk away from this? From me?" I looked up at him, my breath coming in uneven gasps, my chest rising and falling with the weight of what had just happened. I didn't know what to say. How could I? How could I stand here and pretend that I wasn't feeling this pull, this undeniable connection that stretched between us like an invisible thread? "I can't," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I can't be here anymore." Cypher stepped back, his gaze hardening, but there was still that flicker of something almost vulnerable in his eyes. "You can't run from this, Violetta," he said, his voice low but firm. "You think you came here to kill me, but what you really came here for is me." I closed my eyes, my mind spinning. He was right. I had come here for him, in a way I hadn't fully understood until now. And it terrified me. "You don't understand," I whispered again, this time with more force. "I didn't come here for you. I came here to end this." Cypher's gaze darkened, his expression shifting from one of determination to something far more dangerous. He took a step toward me, closing the space between us in a single movement. His hand reached out, tilting my chin so that I had no choice but to meet his eyes. "You came here to end me?" His voice was dark, dangerous. "Then prove it. If you think you can kill me, do it." I gasped, my heart hammering in my chest. "Do it, Violetta," he urged, his voice a low growl. "End me.
Kill me. Show me that you can.
Show me that you're not as weak as you think you are." I felt the cold weight of the necklace against my skin. The poison. The plan. It was right there, within my reach. I could end him right now. But as I stood there, staring into his eyes, the thought of killing him, the man I had kissed, the man I was now undeniably drawn to, felt like a betrayal of everything I had come to know. "I can't," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "I can't do it." Cypher's gaze softened, just for a moment, before it hardened again. "Then you're mine, Violetta. And there's nothing you can do about it." I stood there, frozen, as the realization sank in. I had failed. I had come here to destroy him, to free my people from the grip of the dragons, but now I was just as trapped as he was. I left Cypher's chambers that night, my mind a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't control. I had come here to kill him, but I had walked away instead, leaving behind a piece of myself. A piece I wasn't sure I could ever get back. As I walked through the halls of the palace, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer just a player in this game. I was a part of it. And I had no idea how I was going to get out. Continuing with Chapter 4, we'll explore Princess Violetta's inner turmoil, the growing tension between her and Cypher, and the high stakes of her mission, along with the emotional conflict that continues to bind them. This chapter delves deep into her struggle to remain focused on her mission while fighting against the undeniable pull she feels for the Dragon Emperor. The night seemed to stretch on forever. I returned to my chambers, the weight of the encounter in Cypher's room still heavy on my shoulders. His words, his touch, the burning intensity in his eyes. Everything about him had been like a fever, consuming me until I didn't know who I was anymore. I had come to this palace as a warrior, a strategist, a woman with a clear purpose. But now, it felt like all that I had fought for, all that I had believed in, was slipping away with each passing moment. I couldn't escape the truth. I had kissed him. I had let him touch me. And in that moment, I had allowed myself to believe that he might be more than just the monster I had once sworn to destroy. I couldn't understand it. I didn't want to understand it. I walked to the large mirror in the corner of my room and studied my reflection. The woman staring back at me looked lost, fragile, her eyes clouded with confusion and desire. I barely recognized her. My breath hitched as I reached up to touch my lips, still tingling from the kiss he had claimed from me so effortlessly. The bond between us was stronger than ever, like a pulse beneath my skin. I could feel his presence even when he wasn't near me, could feel the pull of him as though he was a part of me. I was beginning to question everything. My mission, my loyalty, my own heart. I had come here to kill him, to end the reign of dragons once and for all. But now, with every passing day, it seemed that my own heart was turning against me. And if I wasn't careful, I might lose myself to this insidious feeling, this overwhelming attraction that I couldn't control. I turned away from the mirror, frustrated, angry at myself.
No.
This was not who I was. I had to remind myself of that. I had come here to protect my people, to avenge the loss of my family and kingdom. The dragons had taken everything from me, and I would not allow their emperor to seduce me into forgetting that. The next day passed in a blur of meaningless conversation and empty pleasantries. I met with the other princesses who had been invited to court Cypher, each of them trying to outdo the other with charm and grace. They all seemed so eager, so ready to please him. But I saw through it. They were playing a game just like me. They didn't care about Cypher. They cared about winning his favor, about becoming his empress. But I was different. I wasn't here to play a game. I was here to destroy him. And yet, the more time I spent in his presence, the harder that became. I found myself avoiding him at every turn, retreating to my chambers whenever I could, trying to clear my head. But it was no use. I couldn't escape him. Not when he was so close, so present in everything I did. Cypher had been watching me more closely lately. I could feel his eyes on me in every room, could feel the heat of his gaze even when he was across the hall or standing at the far end of the ballroom. It was as if he knew what I was thinking, knew that I was no longer the woman I had been when I first arrived. And it terrified me. I had to regain control. That evening, the palace was alive with the sound of music, laughter, and clinking glasses. Cypher was hosting yet another of his lavish feasts, and I had been summoned to attend. I had spent the entire afternoon in my chambers, pacing and trying to work through my emotions. But the moment I stepped into the ballroom, I felt the familiar rush of heat flood my body. Cypher stood at the center of the room, as always, commanding attention with his presence. His eyes swept the room, landing on me with that same burning intensity. I couldn't look away, couldn't shake the feeling that he could see right through me. The other princesses were gathered around him, laughing and playing their part, but I could see the subtle way they watched him, as if waiting for his attention, hoping for a moment alone with him. They didn't know what it was like to be in his presence, not the way I did. They didn't feel the magnetic pull that made my heart race and my mind spin. I felt a hand on my arm, pulling me back from my thoughts. It was Darius, his face tense with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I nodded quickly, though my insides felt like they were twisted in knots. "I'm fine," I said, though I knew the lie was obvious. "Just a little tired." Darius didn't look convinced. "You've been acting strange lately. Something's wrong, Violetta. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep pretending." I turned to face him, forcing a smile. "I'm not pretending. I'm doing what I have to do." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "You're losing yourself. Don't you see it?
He's playing you.
He's playing all of us." "I know what I'm doing," I said, my voice sharp. "And I'm not going to let him win." But the doubt in my heart whispered otherwise. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending, how much longer I could hold on to the plan that had brought me here. Every time I saw Cypher, I felt the urge to give in, to stop fighting and let myself fall into his world. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I turned away from Darius, moving toward the far end of the ballroom where a small group of guests were gathered. I needed to get away from him, to get away from this game I was playing. But as I walked, I could feel Cypher's gaze following me, his presence like a shadow that stretched across the room. The night passed in a haze of half-conversations and fleeting glances. Every time I thought I had a moment to breathe, I would feel that pull again, that invisible thread tying me to Cypher. He was watching me, and it was impossible to ignore. It was as though he knew exactly what I was thinking, exactly what I was feeling, and it made everything I was doing that much harder. Finally, as the last of the guests began to filter out of the ballroom, Cypher approached me. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something dark, something that made my stomach tighten. "Princess Violetta," he said, his voice low and measured, "I've been waiting for you." I looked up at him, forcing myself to remain composed. "Waiting for me?" I didn't realize I was such a prize. His lips quirked into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You are," he said softly. "But more than that, you're mine." The words hit me like a physical blow, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What do you want from me, Cypher?" He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in a touch that sent a shiver down my spine. "What I've always wanted, Violetta. You." I stepped back, away from his touch, but he followed, his eyes never leaving mine. "You've come here to kill me, haven't you?" he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you're not going to, are you? You can't." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. How did he know? How could he possibly know what I had planned? "I don't have to kill you," I said, my voice trembling with the lie. "You'll destroy yourself." Cypher chuckled darkly, stepping even closer. "Maybe," he said, "but it will be your choice. You will be the one to decide." And then, before I could say another word, his lips were on mine, his kiss searing and demanding. It was everything I had fought against, everything I had sworn to avoid, and yet, as his hands pulled me closer, I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't stop the way my body responded to him, couldn't stop the way he made me feel alive in ways I never thought possible. And just as quickly as it had started, he pulled away, his breath ragged. "You're mine," he said again, his voice thick with something darker than desire. "And I will make you see it." I stared up at him, my chest rising and falling with the force of my breath. He had won. Not the way he thought, but he had won.
Certainly.
Let's continue Chapter 4, building on the emotional intensity between Princess Violetta and Cypher, as well as the spiraling conflict within her heart and mind. The kiss still lingered on my lips, a sensation I couldn't shake, no matter how much I wanted to. His touch, his words, the raw power in the way he held me, it was all too much. My body was betraying me, my heart was conflicted, and my mind was a battlefield. Cypher's presence burned into my skin like a brand, a constant reminder of what I was supposed to be doing here, what I had promised myself I would do. But the closer I came to him, the harder it became to remember the mission. I wanted to hate him. I needed to hate him. But every glance, every touch, chipped away at the walls I had so carefully built around myself. "You're playing a dangerous game, Violetta," Cypher murmured, his breath warm against my ear. He stepped back slightly, his fingers trailing lightly down my arm. I shivered at the touch, despite myself. I tried to push the attraction down, but it was like trying to shove a fire back into a matchbox. It flared up, unpredictable and all-consuming. My heart raced as I pulled my arm away from his, the tension between us thickening the air. "I'm not playing any game. I'm here for one reason, and one reason only." My voice sounded too steady, too calm, but I knew it was a lie. I was no longer sure why I was here. Cypher's eyes darkened, and he stepped closer again, his presence overwhelming. "And that is," he asked, his voice laced with amusement. "To stop you," I said, my words coming out more forcefully than I intended. But the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted in that moment. I needed to cling to the reason I had come here, to remind myself that I wasn't the naive woman who had once dreamed of dragons. "You're a monster, Cypher. Everything you've done, everything you stand for, it's wrong. I will stop you." He tilted his head, regarding me with an unreadable expression. There was something in his eyes, something I couldn't quite place, that made my stomach turn. "You want to stop me?" His lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Then why do you kiss me like that? Why do you look at me like that?" His words were like a punch to the gut. My heart skipped a beat. "I don't look at you like anything." He stepped closer, so close that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the pull of his presence like an invisible tether. "You do, Violetta. I know you do. Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying to you," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not the one who's lying here, Cypher. You think you can control me. You think you can make me forget why I'm here. But I won't let you." His smile faded, and his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "You're right," he said softly. "I don't want to control you. But I want you. And I can feel that you want me, too." I stumbled back, my heart pounding. "No," I breathed, my voice a shaky whisper. "I don't. But the words died in my throat as his gaze bore into me, unyielding, all-consuming. Cypher took a step forward, and I took one back, my mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. He wasn't supposed to get to me like this. He wasn't supposed to make me feel things I didn't want to feel. You're lying again, he said, his voice now hushed, filled with a deep, knowing certainty that twisted in my chest. And you're lying to yourself. You're not here to kill me, Violetta. You're here because you can't resist me. I shook my head, my throat tight, my hands trembling at my sides. I'm here because I have to stop you. You're the enemy. You're the reason my people suffer. You're the reason everything I loved is gone. Cypher's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. And I am the reason you feel this way, aren't I? The reason your heart races when I'm near. The reason you can't walk away. His eyes held mine, and I couldn't look away. His presence was like a flame, and I was caught in its heat, no matter how much I tried to resist. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek, sending a spark of warmth through me. The truth, Violetta, is that you came here to kill me, but you've found something else. You've found something you can't escape, and you're scared. I flinched, my breath caught in my throat. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, erratic and wild. I tried to step back again, but this time his hand shot out, gripping my wrist with a force that left me no room to maneuver. I'm not scared, I said, though it came out as more of a gasp. I'm not scared of you. Yes, you are, he whispered. You're scared of what I make you feel. And you're scared of what will happen when you admit it. My entire body trembled as I looked up at him. The desire, the pull, it was overwhelming. It was like a magnetic force drawing me toward him, and for a brief, horrible moment, I wanted to give in. I wanted to stop fighting. But I couldn't. I couldn't betray everything I had ever believed in, everything I had come here to do. Let go of me, I demanded, my voice hoarse. You don't control me. Cypher smiled, but it was a cruel smile, full of dark amusement. I'm not trying to control you, Violetta. I'm just showing you what you already know. I yanked my wrist free from his grasp, my chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. I don't want you, I spat, though even as I said the words, I knew they weren't true. His smile never faltered. Then why do you keep coming back to me, Violetta? His voice was quiet, almost tender. Why do you keep seeking me out if you don't want me? I stared at him, my body frozen in place, my emotions a swirling storm inside me.
He was right.
I kept coming back to him, over and over again, and it was becoming impossible to ignore the truth. The truth that terrified me more than anything. I came here to kill you, I said, my voice trembling. But I don't know if I can anymore. Cypher's expression softened for the briefest of moments, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Vulnerability, longing. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by that same cold, calculating look. Then don't, he said, his voice low. I've never asked for your love, Violetta. I don't need it. But I do need you. You're mine now, whether you want it or not. I took a step back, my breath catching in my throat. I'll never be yours, I whispered, the words barely audible. Cypher's eyes darkened again, his jaw tightening. We'll see about that, he said, his voice hard. But remember this, Violetta. You're the one who came to me. You're the one who kissed me. You're the one who feels this connection. I turned away from him, my heart pounding in my chest, but before I could leave, I heard him call out to me. Violetta, he said, his voice soft but intense. You're not alone in this. I know you're scared, but we can make this work. We can be something. I froze, my hand on the door. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond. Everything in me screamed to leave, to walk away, and never look back. But part of me, the part that feared this bond more than anything else, wanted to stay. I couldn't stay. I couldn't allow myself to be tangled in this web of desire, of power, of fate. But as I stepped out into the hall, I felt the pull of his words, the weight of the bond. And I knew deep down that this was only the beginning. The days following my encounter with Cypher were a blur of confusion, conflict, and a growing sense of helplessness. I tried to convince myself that nothing had changed, that I was still the same woman who had walked into this palace with a singular goal, to destroy the Dragon Emperor. But every passing moment, every fleeting touch or glance from Cypher, made it harder and harder to ignore the truth. I had never been so drawn to someone in my life, and it terrified me. I spent my days retreating to the corners of the palace, avoiding Cypher at all costs. I told myself it was because I had to stay focused, that I had to finish what I had started. But I couldn't deny the fear that gnawed at me every time I saw him, every time I felt his eyes on me from across the room. He knew it too. He knew I couldn't resist him, and that knowledge gave him power over me, power that I wasn't sure I could escape. I found myself standing in front of the grand window in my chamber, staring out into the darkened sky. The wind howled through the open windows, carrying the scent of the mountains and the distant echoes of dragon wings. It was impossible not to think of him, not to feel the bond between us pulling at me like a tether. It was as though he was always there in the back of my mind, waiting for me to give in. Stop thinking about him, I muttered to myself, running a hand through my hair. You came here for a reason. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were lies. I had come here to kill him, to end the dragon's reign over my people. I had come here to take revenge for the destruction they had wrought on my kingdom, for the lives they had stolen. And yet, every time I looked into Cypher's eyes, every time I felt his presence in the room, all I wanted to do was give in to him. I hated myself for it. The door to my chambers creaked open, and I spun around, my heart jumping into my throat. But it wasn't Cypher. It was Darius. He walked in without waiting for an invitation, his expression hard and focused. We need to talk, he said, his voice low. I didn't have the energy to argue with him.
About what?
I asked, though I already knew the answer. About him, Darius said, his eyes narrowing. About Cypher. You've been avoiding him, and I can see it. This isn't you, Violetta. You're not some helpless girl who can't control her emotions. You're the warrior princess who came here to destroy him. Don't let him get to you. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to lash out at him. He didn't understand. None of them did. I'm not some helpless girl, Darius, I said through gritted teeth. But you don't understand what it's like. You don't know what it feels like to be in his presence, to feel the pull of him. It's like nothing I've ever felt before. Darius's eyes softened, though there was still a hard edge to his voice. I know it's hard, but you can't let him win. You can't let him control you. He's manipulating you, Violetta. You've been too close to him, too long. You need to remember why you're here. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. I knew Darius was right. I couldn't let Cypher manipulate me. I couldn't let him get inside my head like this. But the more I fought it, the more I felt the bond between us tightening, pulling me deeper into his world. I'll do what I have to do, I said, my voice tight. I'm not going to let him win. But I can't keep pretending it's easy. Darius didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then, he stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. I'm with you, Violetta. Always. I nodded, grateful for his support, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. I had to do this alone. I had to face Cypher on my own terms. Later that night, I found myself standing in front of Cypher's door once again. I had spent the entire evening trying to avoid him, trying to push down the emotions that had been growing stronger with each passing day. But I couldn't escape him. He was everywhere, in my thoughts, in my dreams, in the very air I breathed. I reached out to knock on the door, but before my knuckles could make contact, it swung open, revealing Cypher standing on the other side. His eyes were dark, intense, and full of something I couldn't name. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Violetta, he said softly, his voice a low murmur. I knew you would come. I wanted to pull away, to turn and run, but my body wouldn't move. My feet were glued to the floor, my heart caught in my throat. What do you want from me? I managed to whisper, though it felt like the words were being ripped from me. Cypher stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. I don't want anything from you, Violetta. I just want you. I shook my head, my pulse racing.
No.
You don't get to do this. I came here to kill you, remember? He smiled, but it wasn't the smile of the man I had expected. It wasn't cold or calculating, it was something else. Something far more dangerous. You came here to kill me, he repeated, his voice low and soothing, like a whisper in the dark. But you're not going to, are you?
Because you need me.
You want me. I backed up, but he followed me, his presence like a storm I couldn't outrun. I'm not weak, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. I came here to destroy you, to stop you. Cypher's gaze softened, his hand reaching out to touch my cheek. You don't need to destroy me, Violetta, he whispered. You just need to accept what's already there. I flinched at his touch, but I couldn't pull away. I was trapped in this web of desire, of power, of fate. The bond between us was stronger than ever, and I could feel it now, a pull that was impossible to ignore. It was more than just physical attraction. It was something deeper, something primal. No, I said, my voice breaking. I can't. You already have, Cypher said softly, his voice full of certainty. You can't escape me, Violetta. You're mine now, and I'm not letting you go. I wanted to scream, to fight him, to push him away and end this madness once and for all. But the truth was I couldn't. I had already given in, and I wasn't sure I could find the strength to pull away. The days after that night were a haze of emotions and confusion. I spent most of my time locked away in my chambers, avoiding Cypher at all costs. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was always there, watching me, waiting for me to give in. And I couldn't deny it any longer. I had already given him everything. But the worst part? The part that made my heart ache in a way I didn't understand? I didn't want to take it back. The air in the palace had grown heavier in the days since that night. The walls seemed to close in around me, and each step I took only seemed to draw me deeper into the web Cypher had spun. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape him. I couldn't escape the bond between us, the magnetic force that was pulling me in, urging me to surrender, to give in to the power, the attraction, and the feelings I had spent so long denying. I had come to the palace with a mission, a singular purpose, to destroy Cypher and free my people. But now, I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know if I was still the woman who had arrived here with nothing but rage and vengeance in her heart, or if I was someone else entirely, a woman torn between love and duty, between the man I had once sworn to kill and the one who had captured my heart. Every moment spent in his presence had only made it harder to remember why I had come here. He had won. Not in the way he thought, not in the way he wanted, but he had won nonetheless. His touch, his gaze, the way he made me feel, it all held me captive, body and soul. But there was one thing he didn't know. One thing I had never told him. I wasn't just fighting him for my kingdom. I was fighting him because I loved him. I stood before the mirror in my chambers, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. The woman who looked back at me was different now. Her eyes were clouded with confusion, her heart heavy with the secret I had been keeping from Cypher. I had wanted to tell him. I had wanted to say the words that had been burning inside me for days now. But how could I? How could I tell him that I loved him when I had come here to destroy him? My fingers grazed the edge of the necklace I still wore around my neck, the poison that had once been my weapon, the key to my victory. I had never used it. I had never even come close. The truth was, I didn't want to kill him anymore. I couldn't. The door to my chambers creaked open, and I turned to see Cypher standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He was as tall and imposing as ever, his presence filling the room with a palpable heat. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice low and measured, though there was an edge to it, something raw beneath the calm exterior. "I haven't been avoiding you," I said quickly, though I knew it was a lie. "I've just needed time to think." Cypher stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving mine. "Think about what, Violetta?" he asked, his voice growing more insistent. "You've been here for weeks now. You've kissed me, you've touched me, you've felt everything that's between us. But you still won't admit the truth." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. The truth. The one thing I had been hiding from him and from myself. "The truth is that I came here to destroy you. I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. I came here to kill you, to stop the dragons once and for all. But now I don't know anymore. Cypher took a step closer, his gaze intense, almost pleading. Violetta, you're not here to kill me. You're here because you can't resist me. You're here because you feel what I feel. I shook my head, my heart pounding in my chest. I came here for revenge, I said, my voice trembling. I came here because you took everything from me. You destroyed my kingdom, my family, my people. And I thought I could kill you. But now, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can go through with it. Cypher reached out, his hand brushing gently against my cheek. I closed my eyes at the touch, a shiver running through me. You don't have to kill me, Violetta, he said softly, his voice almost a whisper. You don't have to keep fighting this. You're mine. And I'm yours. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze, and for the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't just using me. He wasn't just trying to manipulate me into something I wasn't. He was telling me something real, something I had been too afraid to admit. I'm not afraid of you anymore, I whispered, my voice breaking as the weight of my feelings came crashing down on me. I love you, Cypher.
I've always loved you.
But I was too afraid to say it. Too afraid to admit it. Because everything I came here for, everything I thought I was fighting for, it's all falling apart. Cypher's expression softened, his hand cupping my face gently. You don't have to fight anymore, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We can be together. You and me. We can have everything we want. I'll protect you, Violetta. I'll give you everything. We'll be together, and we'll make this work. But there was a weight to his words, something I couldn't ignore. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know that I was barren, that I could never give him the one thing he wanted most, an heir. He didn't know that the bond we shared was a cruel twist of fate, a bond that had brought us together in a way that felt like destiny, but had no future. And I had never been more afraid of losing him. The silence between us grew thick with unspoken words, the truth hanging in the air like a heavy fog. My heart ached with a longing I couldn't express, and I knew, deep down, that I couldn't keep this secret from him forever. If we were going to be together, if I was going to choose him, I had to tell him everything. I had to tell him the truth. But I couldn't bring myself to say the words.
Not yet.
I don't know what to do, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't know how to fix this. Cypher stepped forward, wrapping his arms around me in a tight embrace, pulling me close to his chest. You don't have to fix anything. We'll figure it out together. I promise. But I knew the promise he had made was a lie. I couldn't give him what he wanted. I couldn't give him an heir. And no matter how much I loved him, no matter how much I wanted to be with him, there was no escaping the truth that I had been hiding from him all along. I pressed my face into his chest, feeling the warmth of his body against mine, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For a moment, I let myself forget everything, the mission, the poison, the kingdom, and the war that had brought me here. I let myself believe that we could have something real, something beautiful, despite everything that stood between us. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had come here to destroy him, but now all I wanted was to save him. And I didn't know if I could. Days passed, and the tension between Cypher and me continued to grow. We both tried to pretend like nothing had changed, but the bond between us was too strong to ignore. It was as if we were tethered to each other, and no matter how much I fought it, I couldn't break free. And then one night it happened. Cypher summoned me to his chambers once again, and this time I knew it was different. There was something in his eyes, something in the way he held himself, that made my heart skip a beat. I had come to expect his presence in my life, but tonight, I was afraid of what he might say. He was waiting for me by the window, his back to me as he gazed out into the night. The moonlight bathed him in a soft glow, making him look even more otherworldly, more powerful than ever before. I walked toward him, my breath catching in my throat as I took in the sight of him. "Violetta," he said softly, his voice full of something I couldn't quite place. "I've made a decision." I stopped in my tracks, my heart racing. "What decision?" He turned to face me, his eyes dark and intense. I can't live without you. I won't. You're my mate. And I won't let you go. I swallowed hard, my chest tight with the weight of his words. Cypher. He took a step toward me, cutting me off. I'm not asking you to bear my heir. I'm asking you to be with me. To be my empress. To stand by my side, now and always. The words hung in the air like a promise, but I knew they came with a price. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know that the future I could give him wasn't the one he wanted. He didn't know that I was incapable of giving him the one thing he desired most. But as I looked into his eyes, I realized that it didn't matter. The bond between us was stronger than any secret. And in that moment, I knew that I had to choose. I had to decide whether to tell him the truth or continue living a lie. And I knew, deep down, that I couldn't keep lying to him. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Floxy's Shifter Romance Tales, because the next story is already waiting. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next tale.